Hello everybody, welcome to a video. If you wonder why I'm whispering, it is almost 1 a.m. I think tonight's the night to make some moonshine. Well, not actually moonshine, but mead, actually. You see here, I have 4 perfectly usable empty glass bottles. 4 of them that have been cleaned. Not with anything acidic, but just cleaned. I also have 3 containers of bread yeast. Now, this fall, when the grapes and raspberries are ripe, I'm gonna turn them into mead and put them in my various, I got 7 of these to mead over the winter and open next spring. It is currently May, so we're not anywhere close to that. However, I have never made mead before, or any fermentation for that matter, so I have an idea. I have here a big, somewhat big container of honey that's about up to here. If I use a relatively medium amount in each of these 4 containers, fill the rest up with water and maybe some different juices, mix it around, well, not fill it up to the top, probably fill it up to about here, giving some air. Take one of those yeast containers, split it among the 4, and then put balloons on them and set them up as an experiment. We'll see if we're able to make alcohol. If the bent over balloons raise up, it means that it's working. Now, obviously the goal of this is not to make a really good mead, it's just to know if I can pull off a fermentation at all. Now, this is something I have not checked, which is, do we have balloons in the first place, which could be a problem if we don't. Turns out we do have balloons. I have 4 of them here. So 2 blue, 2 white. Now I did some research. Mead can be made with bread yeast. 2 things though. 1, probably not high alcohol percentage, probably 4, maybe 5% ABV, which my goal is to get any. So, any fermentation at all is, I consider that a win. Other thing about bread yeast is that it gives it a bit of a, bready flavor, which, to be expected. But anyway, now we just have to make up the mixture. One of the things we want to do, though, is wash the balloon inside and out. Now, I thought they were joking when they said this, but apparently there's a powder on the balloon, the inside and the outside, that isn't good to ingest. So we're going to work with that first. Alright, so now that I washed those already once, but I washed them a second time just in case, all of the balloons are washed as well. Now we come up with the mixture, which I would follow a recipe, but I didn't find a really good recipe for only 48 fluid ounces. These are 412 ounce, which is like a micro batch. Technically, very, although a micro batch is 2 quarts or something. This is less than that, so we'll see what happens. I'll just mix something up and we'll see if it works. Okay, so we've put about that much honey in each. Now it's a little uneven. I put a little less in that one and there's a little bit more in that one. So it's kind of uneven, but it should be enough honey to make at least a percent or something. Should be able to do something. Now I just have to add water to this and maybe something else, and we'll give it a try. So honey, water, and some other things, including spices, can be used in mead. However, here's the problem. Garlic mead is a thing, but it doesn't sound like it would be good. So I think this is what we're gonna do instead. I like Tennessee Fire and fire, like, you know, cinnamon, like, you know, and so I thought the spice that we would use is some ground cinnamon. Not much, of course, but a little bit. Hopefully get a bit of a fiery flavor. Here's the first one. It looks a bit like a disgusting mess, but that's honey, water, and cinnamon. Maybe too much cinnamon, but I kind of varied it. So this one had the most cinnamon, then less cinnamon down to here, which had the least amount of honey and only a sprinkle of cinnamon, and then it kind of escalates up to this one, which had the most honey and most cinnamon. Okay, so I looked this up. Apparently you do have to heat it up. So we already got 2 done already, so we're a little bit late. But now I know exactly the amount of water and stuff I need. So now I can pour it into a container, warm it, not boiling, warm, stir it around, and make sure it's completely mixed, then put it in here. So I think we're gonna do that. Instead of waking my mom, who is asleep, I decided to come out here and wake the neighborhood. I'm kidding. I decided to come out here and use the grill instead of making it smell aside, making her come out and be really mad with me. So I have a little burner here on the side of the grill and a pan that's, you know, relatively beat up that will warm it in and then bottle it out here on the patio in case there's any spilling. None of it has to stay in the floor inside. Okay, here we go. The side burner is on, so we can now bring over our pan and put our mixtures into it. Now, as this mixture warms up, we gotta go inside and get the yeast. All right, we have 1 package of active dry bread yeast, although, yeah, bread yeast. Does expired yeast work in mead? Let me look that up real quick. Okay, it's been warmed, and you can see there's some steam rising off of it. I'm gonna go ahead and cut the fire and the gas. And then I'm gonna stir it for a bit, put it in the bottles, wait for it to cool a bit, and then we'll add the yeast. Okay, I've got a meat thermometer here, and it says it's at 149 degrees. So 150 or 149. So I'm going to wait for it to cool down and say around 80 before the yeast goes in. It seems to be taking longer than usual to cool off. It's still at about 110 degrees, and the instructions said wait until it's below 90 to pitch the meat or the yeast. Pitch the yeast into the mixture. So I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna watch some YouTube while I let that happen, and in a bit when I go out and check it again, if it's below 90 and stays below 90 consistently, I'll pour the yeast in. The yeast is old. They said that the people that did the research from said that it's okay to use old yeast. It may just not work as well. It's totally up to just what happens. Apparently, a couple of hours after you pitch it, it should bubble. And if it doesn't bubble after a couple of days, then you're probably working with dead yeast, but we'll see. Okay, so we're almost there. We are currently at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, so it won't be too much longer before we get it below 90. If this experiment does not work and the yeast does not ferment, it means I'll have to either 1, get new yeast, or 2, give up on the whole try to make Garden and Brew this year and change the name of the series back over to, instead of Gardening and Brewing 2024, just Gardening 2024, which wouldn't be the first time I changed the series name because something went wrong. But I would really like this portion to work. So keep your fingers crossed. I have an interview this upcoming Saturday at Raising Cane's to be a cook. And if I get that job, I'll be working and hopefully keeping the job for long enough. No, keeping the job for long enough to maybe buy more yeast. And maybe the brewing kind, like the correct stuff. But if one, I don't get the job, or two, I don't work for long enough to make much money, or three, I don't spend it on that. But firstly, if this doesn't work and it tells me that the 3 packets of yeast are not usable, or too old and not usable, then might have to just switch this video series to gardening. But we'll see. This next couple of weeks should tell us what happens. It says that it should ferment for like about a month. So, have to wait and see. Hopefully, wait a month for it to ferment before it's able to be used. However, I'm not going to drink this. This is just an experiment. I might drink a little of it, but I'm going to throw most of it out, even though it is a bit of a waste. Or we'll just get to it when we get to it, or it won't ferment at all, and I have to throw it out anyway. Anyway, when it gets to 90, I'll put the yeast in, and Mr. Yeast, and we'll see what happens. All right, here we are, several minutes after 3 a.m., and it is consistently staying around, like, between 82 and 87. So we're below 90, which means we can now put the yeast in. Okay, here we are with the yeast now in. We now have to stir it, and unfortunately, the only thing I have are some of these. So I did sterilize them though, so we should be good to go. Now I just have to get this, which is a funnel it off into my bottles, put the balloons on top with a little pinprick, tiny little pinprick in the top of the balloons, so that the gas can build up to the point where it opens the hole, the gas goes out, like an airlock if I had one of those. So we're going to do that next, and then I'm going to put them in the garage and I'll show you the setup. As I thought, the last one had the most of the cinnamon went to the bottom, which means this last one will have a lot of cinnamon. Oh, well, that's not just cinnamon, that's also the yeast. So the last one may be the most cinnamoniest. Most cinnamony. That's it. All right, here's the setup. I've got the original carrier. They'll sit like this with enough air to ferment out. These balloons on top have very small pin pricks at the top, so if they start building up pressure, the pressure can be let out. I kept the bottle caps. If I were in the Fallout universe, I could use these for currency and maybe buy something. Xandar root or something, I don't know. But I'm going to keep these caps with them just in case I need them later. But that is going to sit in my garage for a while. We'll check up on it later and see if it forms bubbles. Just in case my mother finds this, I'm going to put Nate Experiment Do Not Touch or Move and fold it up and stick it in the top of that thing and put it in the garage. It needs 3 to 4 weeks to sit at least before we can taste it. Date bottled today. May 14th date to taste would be June 11th. So June 11th is the day that we'll pull the balloons out, strain it to get, the yeast and stuff that will be essentially floating on the top out. And then we'll taste the bottom part. So we'll basically take a normal strainer like this, line the inside with cheesecloth, and strain it probably into this big thing. Not with the ice, but just by itself. Clean those out, taste it, and if it tastes good, rebottle it and put the cap on. Caps. So this is the end of this experimentation video. I'll upload periodical videos of both gardening and looking at this to see if it starts bubbling. But that's all I got for now. So thank you for joining us for this very informative video and potentially successful experiment. Tune in next time.